Hi, I'm Patricia Ruby Powell, and I'm the author of several books for children. The one I'm going to talk about today is Lift as You Climb, the story of Ella Baker. My other books are, more recent books anyway, are Struttin' with Some Barbecue, Lil Hardin Armstrong Becomes the First Lady of Jazz, Loving versus Virginia, the documentary novel for young adults, and Josephine, the dazzling life of Josephine Baker. So, Lift as You Climb is not yet quite a book. It's an F&G, a fold and gathering. So what that means is before the book becomes a book, it is a packet of papers. And most picture books are 32 pages, and there are two 16-page packets. But this is a 48-page picture book, so there are three. 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to read this book to you, and I'm going to do one packet at a time. It is illustrated by our Gregory Christie, and I read to you by permission of Simon Schuster, who publishes the book, the mother company of MacElderry. Oh, this is a book in verse. It is nonfiction, and it is the biography of Ella Baker, who is a contemporary of Martin Luther King, but older than Martin Luther King. And as you'll see in the story, they had great respect for each other, but they didn't always see eye to eye. So here's the beginning of Ella's remarkable life. Under a bright North Carolina sun, Ella rode to church with Granddaddy and Mama. When Granddaddy Mitchell stood to preach, Ella sat in the deacon's chair, legs ruler straight, ears soaking up his strong voice. He preached, give to others. He preached, join together. He spoke freedom. He asked, what do you hope to accomplish? It's a little harder to turn these pages because it's not a book. I love all the different colors that Gregory uses. After church at Granddaddy's farm, the farm he and Grandma worked as slaves, the farm they toiled on like mules after emancipation till they bought and owned it, where Ella played catchball with her cousins till Grandma said, dinner time, and afterwards, listen. Back when we was slaves, Master said, bet you marry light-colored, skinned Carter. I said, no how. Master, also my daddy, made me plow the swamp to break me. After turning the muck, I went and jumped the broom, married proud, dark Mitchell, your granddaddy, and danced all night long. Ella drank up that story till it filled her bones. She listened to neighbors tell about chopping cotton, many still living in shacks, worked white people's lands like her grandparents had back in slaves' days. On their land, her grandparents raised vegetables, hogs and cows. On their land, they built a church and a school. Church said, help your neighbor. Mama said, lift as you climb. Let me put on my matching glasses. When Ella was about 10, Mama said, Ella, help the neighbors. Ella rounded up the motherless children, dragged them home, dunked them, scrubbed them, dressed them in clean clothes, returned them to their grateful daddy. Ella harvested peas. After her family ate their fill, she took a peck of peas to the neighbors. When strangers came over, Ella'd stoke the fire, warm the food, and serve it. At 14, Ella set off for boarding school in Raleigh, high school and college at Shaw University, top of her class, worked as a waitress to pay her way. After she graduated, Ella moved to New York City. She asked herself, what do I hope to accomplish? She would lift as she climbed. She joined voices that demanded, don't buy where you cannot work. Negroes needed jobs. White shop owners needed Negroes to buy from their shops, or they'd close. Without jobs, without money, Negroes couldn't buy from white shops. Ella and other colored people told the shop owners so. Some whites hired a few blacks. They needed each other. Ella fought for that step towards justice. She fought for rights. She fought for her people. She got a job with the NAACP, raised money to fight racial injustice in the courts by selling memberships and registering voters. That's the first third, the first 16. The NAACP focused on finding members in the Negro elite, preachers, doctors, businessmen, but Ella had a different idea. She'd find a church, get herself invited, talk at Sunday service, make friends with everyday people, middle-class maids, shop workers, and poor sharecroppers, not just the elite, and ask, what do you hope to accomplish? Whoops, this is the problem of it not being a book yet. It will be soon, though. She listened in Mims, Florida. Our school principal asked for a teacher's pay equal to white teacher's pay. Whites dynamited his home, killed him. Ella mourned, then said, you want equal pay for Negroes? Register to vote. Choose your representative. They will listen to your complaint. That representative will fight for the Negro. All over the South, Ella made speeches about freedom, voting, rights, words straight from her heart to the hearts of her audience. Then she'd ask, what do you hope to accomplish? In one Virginia town, people objected to police brutality. Why'd the police beat Negroes when they hadn't committed a crime? Another town wanted better teachers' salaries and school buses. Another, use of city parks and playgrounds. They wanted fair treatment, but the Negro middle class resisted joining the NAACP and getting the vote. Why anger their white bosses, risk their jobs, their comforts? Why risk being hungry? Ella told this story. Across the tracks, the poor live in filth and get diseases. Those diseases hop those itty-bitty tracks and infect you. That made sense to the middle class. All Negroes were in this together. They'd have to risk angering their bosses. Ella and her new friends, workers, partners, believers, mostly women, walked into bar and grills, schools, beer gardens, boot-black parlors. She was always the poised lady, always Miss Baker, posing the question, what do you hope to accomplish? The people wanted freedom. Martin Luther King Jr. and 100 men, mostly preachers, and Ella, worked together for black freedom. They formed the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Churches worked with preachers at the top, handing down knowledge from the pulpit to the flock. That's how these preachers wanted to work now, like their churches did, from the top down. Ella worked from the bottom up, from the grassroots. She wanted people to solve their own problems, like her mother taught her, lifting as she climbed. But the powerful men weren't used to women working in their inner circle. Ella listened to the people, then raised their questions with the preachers. Shouldn't we harness the power of black women as leaders? Shouldn't we train local teachers? Shouldn't we create education programs? Seems reasonable to me. She challenged Reverend King with her ideas. Rather than just the elite and the middle class, what about the poorest? What about the people at the bottom? Dr. King didn't always agree with Ella, but he respected her. He said, Ella must head up our new organization, the SCLC, to register voters, stand up to the whites. His order came from the top down. Ella thought he should ask, not command. Still, she agreed for the cause, for the freedom movement. She'd empower people to take action. She would register voters. Then something amazing happened. Negro students sat at whites-only lunch counters. They wanted to be served a hamburger alongside white people in the store where they bought school supplies. In Greensboro, Nashville, Atlanta, Durham, sit-ins exploded throughout the South. Ella had never been so excited. She brought the students together at a conference at Shaw University. She wanted them to organize. A united swell of voices was more powerful than individual voices. They asked her advice. Always the teacher, she asked them, "What do you hope to accomplish?" They wanted to register voters. They wanted to stage sit-ins. They named themselves Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, SNCC. Students staged sit-ins. Some got whipped or spat on. They sat quietly, responding with non-violence. Many were jailed. Ella listened and comforted them, brought toothbrushes and soap to their cells. She advised them, lift as you climb. The students ventured back into the fight armed with Ella's wisdom. Tennessee tenant farmer workers, poor Negroes working for white plantation owners, hungry and bone-tired from overwork, tried to register to vote. White bosses evicted them from their shacks, beat them for being bold. Now the sharecroppers lived in tents. The students asked them, "What do you hope to accomplish?" They wanted justice. They wanted the vote. They wanted to be treated like citizens. Ella worked alongside the students when they rode in battered school buses and commercial buses, testing the new integration laws by breaking old Jim Crow laws. They sat in whites-only seats. They came south to help desegregate. In Alabama, the buses were firebombed. Students were beaten, jailed. Those freedom riders of 1961 woke up the nation. Ella had helped plan the rides. She advised the students in meetings, on car trips, over ice cream sundaes, at night sharing tiny beds, as the students brainstormed, connected, struggled to become their own leaders. Many of them women, when it was new to be a woman leading. Ella said, "We are not fighting for freedom of the Negro alone, but for the freedom of the human spirit." To her last days, Ella fought for freedom, lifting as she climbed. The seeds she sowed all her life continue to bear fruit today. She said, "The struggle for rights didn't start yesterday and has to continue until it is won." What do you hope to accomplish? So I ask you that because we all need to work for freedom. Then there's a very long author note at the end of this book, giving more details about Ella's life. There is a timeline, and there is an extensive bibliography, including those people who I interviewed or the interviews that I listened to. So this book can be purchased from Simon Schuster. It can be purchased from an independent bookstore like Jane Addams Bookstore. It is a picture book, but it is a picture book for middle grade readers, as I think you can tell by looking at it. If you look at photographs of Ella Baker, you will see that Gregory really captured her. You probably noticed that Martin Luther King looked like Dr. Martin Luther King in the illustrations as well. It's really beautifully illustrated. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, this is Patricia Ruby Powell. Bye-bye.